introduce to you the man of the hour,
Tony. Hello and welcome back to At the Gates. I am at a new stadium and I am your host, Tony, coming to you from Progressive Field. Technically, we've done an episode, Jared and I, from this very stadium, but never got to witness a game. This is my third try. First time was with Jared with that rain out. Second time was, I think, maybe in July or August. I think it was July when I had a kidney stone on the way over. So that nixed that plan. And finally here in September of 2018, over a year later, it's sunny. Even though the forecast for a few days before that was saying that it was going to be rainy and possibly thunderstorms, so don't pay attention to your Apple app that shows the weather. So just travel to Cleveland, hope like hell, and maybe on the third time you'll get to watch a game. Pretty excited because I am sitting out in the what amounts to basically the center field gates. I think that they probably technically call it the right field gates, but it's pretty much in center. And there is a man staring at me. And I just saw him the other day, actually in Minnesota. That man is actually a little bit bigger here than he was in Minnesota. That is Jim Thome. He is immortalized in bronze. And his iconic stance with his bat in his right hand pointing right at you is pretty much looking me dead in the eyes. So I am very honored to be under Jim's presence once again. It's really cool seeing the area that he hit a few home runs. He was recently inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame. And I think he goes down as a pretty good player and probably even better guy from all the interactions that I've had and from what everyone else has said. Seems like a genuinely nice dude, and really cool that we got to root for him in Minnesota for just under 2 years. We seem to really latch on to Jim, and even though he was a Twins killer when he was with the Indians and the White Sox, he killed a few teams when he was with us, so that was good. Probably one of the best teams that I've been able to see as a Twins fan, especially during my days of ball hawking, was that 2010 team. And all I can say is stupid Yankees. Stupid Yankees. Well, like I said, I'm waiting at the gates already. It is, I don't know, let's see what time it is. 12:19. Game is at 4. So I'm a bit early. I guess you could say that. Parked somewhat close, actually really close, because I got here so early. There was still street parking, and since it is a holiday, the street parking is free. So I'm pretty stoked about that. Hopefully no one gives me a ticket. I mean, they shouldn't. That's what the people around me said that were locals, and also that's what the signs said. Had that happen last trip, getting free parking, so I guess the streak continues. I don't know that I'm going to be able to do that. Well, kind of get to do that because next stop is Toronto. Spoilers, sorry. It is in Toronto at the Rogers Centre, and the day of the game I am actually staying overnight at the ballpark in one of those rooms that overlooks the field. So hopefully I can get one before the gates even open, tossed up into my hotel room. But since I am staying there, I'm thinking that I should be able to get some parking right there. And even though it comes at a price for my hotel stay, I mean, technically that's free. Okay, that's a bit of a stretch, and that's more time dedicated to parking than I think anyone has ever spent in any type of sports podcast. if you can call it that. So, got into town yesterday, took off yesterday, left, I want to say, did I leave at 7? Yeah, I think no, maybe close to 8. I don't know. I left at 8 o'clock. 8 a.m. in Minneapolis. Got here at about 7:45. So 6:45 Minneapolis time. Just under 11 hours, and actually pulled in, instead of coming right into Cleveland, went into the Cuyahoga Valley National Park over to the Brandywine Falls, and I would definitely recommend that. I only got a few minutes before the sun went down and it was too dark to take some videos, but that will be up and part of this video that I am making at this field. So again, look out for that. Baseball Road Tripper on YouTube. But I would definitely recommend going over to the falls. It was really fun, really nice looking, and really chill and laid back, especially for a national park. It's kind of weird because it's so close to a large city and doesn't really have the feel of, especially some of the national parks out west, but it was still nice to cross one off. I think that's going to be something that I slowly work towards after going to all the baseball stadiums. So next thing will be crossing off all the states and crossing off national parks. So I got another one done. Then after that, I kept my eyes peeled because I'm on the lookout for a tree around here called the pawpaw. Pawpaw. It is a tree that produces a fruit called the pawpaw. I wonder where they got that. And it is supposedly basically a tropical fruit, but it is native to this area, especially in the Ohio River Valley. Sounds like it grows in partial sunlight and in really moist, almost like in riverbeds. Small, almost cross between like a bush and a tree. It's pretty small. I didn't see one, and unfortunately the thing that I was going to do today was go over to the West Side Market here in Cleveland and try to find one, but since it is a holiday, they are closed. So I didn't get to have a pawpaw. They're supposed to be really good, really tropical, almost creamy. I've heard banana-like, mango-like, and many other adjectives to describe it. It just sounds like a really unique and interesting fruit, especially for one that is native to the U.S. And I'm still going to keep my eyes peeled, but unfortunately, I think this trip I will not be able to get one, which that kind of sucks, because that was one of the highlights that I had on my list. But you can't win them all, and I guess that just means that I'm going to have to come back. Or if you're listening to this and you know of a pawpaw tree, tell me, and if you can overnight me one, I would be willing to pay for that, because I really want to try it, like a lot. After being shut out at the market, I went over to a place called The Loop, and it is a coffee shop and record store kind of wrapped up in one. It was a really cool experience. Pretty small inside, but I found some things that I was not expecting and had not seen in the wild before. So yeah, it was definitely worth stopping. And because I've been asking pretty much everyone everywhere I stop if they've ever heard of a pawpaw, because, tracking it down like a crazy person, I asked them, the workers at the Loop, and the guy hadn't heard of it, but one of the girls behind the counter said that she's actually had it and knows of a plant in, of all places, Madison, Wisconsin, because that's where she had had it and knew someone that would forage them. So, I mean, it's not that terribly far, and it's kind of on my way back home. So, I'm thinking out loud here. I might make a stop. Maybe after the game is done on Saturday night, drive over to Madison, spend the night there, get up, look for this tree, find a pawpaw. Let's see, what else do we have? So I mentioned that Toronto is next. I also mentioned that the finishing game on this road trip is Milwaukee. And in between that, the day before, on that Friday, that is Detroit. So I get to hit up 4 in about a week. And I'm pretty massively stoked, especially for Detroit for some reason. I'll talk about it a little bit more in that episode, but let's just say there are some family ties, and I get to do something the day before I go into Detroit. I'll be going to a different area in Michigan and kind of witnessing and bringing up some of those family ties. So it's all in all a really positive and good trip. The drive here was super simple, and I can't believe that I hadn't made this trip before. I mean, it's easy, it's nice, pretty decent. Yeah. The only other thing I did right before this was go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and quite honestly, you're not missing much. I don't think it was worth the $26, maybe $6. But to say I've been there, especially for me liking music, it makes sense. That being said, I don't think it's really a perfect organization, especially for what it represents. I think there's a lot of bands that deserve to be in there, and a lot of discussion about what constitutes rock and roll. Is it more of a popular music hall of fame? But that could be a whole other podcast right there. I think that pretty much wraps it up for right now. I'll probably give a little bit more of an update, especially maybe on the drive home. Got to do one lap around the stadium here already, so I feel comfortable at least knowing my surroundings a little bit. I have a couple tickets here. I'm going to try to get a toss-up in kind of behind the dugout area, and then actually play the home run porch area in right field, right by the bullpen. So maybe tonight you'll see me in my bright yellow Shredders t-shirt catching a home run. That would be pretty amazing, especially because right now the wind is blowing out. I'll give you more of an update here shortly. Post-game recap. Wow. Progressive as a stadium, let's start with the positives. I think that is a fantastic stadium. Nice and quirky, very large concourses, double-sided. That's pretty sweet. Good statue area. Nice to see Jim Thome there. Well, the statue. And in general, I think it had some really cool places to potentially catch a baseball. But I still had a bit of bad luck. Third time was the charm because I got to see a game, but not so much for batting practice. It rained as I waited at the gates for maybe about 10-15 minutes, and that happened about half an hour before the gates were ready to open. Enough for them to stop the batting practice that they had already started. And then once we were in the gates, it drizzled off and on for maybe 5 more minutes. And the tarp was on the field, And then the Royals, who were warming up their pitchers, got off the field, waited. They took off the tarp, which was looking like good news, but then they also took out the batting cage. So there you have it. Luckily, I was able to get a ball right away from one of the Royals. And yeah, it was not ideal. Ended up the day with 4 somehow, but it was touch and go, and it was probably the hardest that I've ever had to hustle in order to get that type of total. Got 2 of the commemoratives from the Royals, so that was pretty cool. Ended up with 2 game balls. One of them has a interesting story. That was the 3rd ball, the first gamer that I got. That was tossed up in the bottom of the 7th. There was a foul ball, went over into the Royals dugout, which then they tossed over to the fans, and I was right there and kind of rattled around and ended up in between this guy's feet. And I noticed it as I was bending down that he had it in his feet, but he definitely wasn't looking because he just was sitting there looking at me. I put the ball in my hand, then kind of looked at him like, oh crap, just because it was kind of confrontational, and immediately his wife was like, but he had it in his feet, which I felt bad enough about. I still don't think it was possession, and I think that everyone else would agree with me, especially if they saw what was going down. The people around me, since I was wearing the big glove for a couple innings before that, they were actually kind of on my side because they were like, oh, looks like the money you put in the big glove paid off. So not everyone was pissed off at me, so that was, I guess, the good takeaway from that. But just in general, it was odd. Had a couple cool seats, the one right by the dugout because I wanted to get a ball, but that took a really long time. Then the last few innings I spent out in section 101, which I would love to watch an entire game from out there, especially if I could do batting practice and stuff, because that's one of the best sections in all of baseball. If you don't care about all you can eat and all of the fancy stuff like that, for view and experience and your surroundings right there, it is really cool. You got the Hall of Fame as you're sitting looking at the field. It is to your right, so a nice little cool park that you can walk through. Then directly behind you are the bullpens, which you can see because there's a little glass divider, and then on top of that, some netting. And you're right there. You're only a couple feet away from the players as they're warming up, and it's just unreal. That was a really cool experience. So if I went back, I don't really want to test my fate, but if I did go back there, I'd do that section. Especially because they also let you just stand up the entire time. So if you're playing for home runs out there, you can run around. It's pretty nice. So right now, as you can tell, I think I mentioned it before, but I am driving. I am on my way to Toronto. I'll give more of a rundown with that in, less than 24 hours. It's about 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 Central. And I also just booked a hotel Waited to the last minute, but I didn't know what time the game was going to be done and if I was going to make it all the way to Toronto. But ended up booking one downtown that normally goes for in the $700 to $800 range, and got it for $130, and I'm feeling pretty damn good about that. So I might have to put that in part of the YouTube video because it could end up being a very, very nice place to stay. So Cleveland, overall recap. I'd say I liked it well enough. I don't think temperatures in the low to mid 90s with high humidity is something that happens every game. But if you factor out some of the weather, I think that the experience was pretty good. The stadium itself, I think, especially since they've made the upgrades, you can tell in certain areas it's older than Target Field, but it's really not. I don't think it's that far off from Target Field in general, and I don't know if it's right ahead or tied, or it's in the ballpark of Target Field. I think that Target Field is a middle of the road stadium, and I think I have it at number 11 right now of the now 25 or whatever parks that I've visited. So yeah, I would say maybe this one is just ahead of Target Field. I don't think it's leaps and bounds ahead because of the age, and the upgrades that they've done are nice, but you still have some older, quirky, and a little bit rundown areas. But part of the deal, I guess, with the All-Star game was, excuse me, there, that was for you, Chelsea. Part of the deal with the All-Star game, though, in them hosting it, they had to agree that they are going to retire the Chief Wahoo logo. So I think everyone's a winner in that, because I'm sure Cleveland wanted an All-Star game. Did they deserve one yet? Maybe, maybe not. But they played their cards right, saying, hey, we have something that MLB wants us to get rid of. How about you give us something to compensate that? And vice versa, MLB definitely wanted that logo gone, and they could give them something like the All-Star game, which comes with the territory of them doing upgrades to their stadium too. So I think MLB did something good, and definitely had a good compromise right there. Now, I mean, if they could maybe, change the name of the team, that would be a little bit more, but we're starting. Good first steps. I am almost in, maybe not. I thought I was almost in Pennsylvania, but I don't think so. But I'm rambling. I don't know that there's much else to say. The sun is setting. I got my bag o 7-Eleven goodies. And still have about 4 hours on the road. Wish me luck at the border. Not that I need it, but hopefully it's quick and easy. Got my passport. Got my passport ID card. And I also got my cell phone coverage to cover Canadian calls and data. It's like I'm prepared or something. Tony, signing off. thank you for listening. And if you're listening to this, future Tony, I just want you to know that you're pretty cool.